going to get my screen share up and ready from the beginning. Okay. The meeting's being recorded. Okay. My microphone's on. Good. Right, who's here? Mary, Susan, Angelina, Maria, Peggy, Pika. Hello, all. We're a little late getting started because Isabella's not well, but she's managed to start the meeting, and she's going to be at the meeting. She just said she has to lie down. And also, I'm not that well either. I have a touch of flu. We've got a really weird flu going around Brisbane at the moment, plus some kind of whooping cough epidemic. So all of our classes have been a little bit of a chorus of coughs. But I think I'll be fine for leading today's class, and I'm really happy to be here. So let's get started because it is just after the hour. And so really warm welcome to everybody. I hope you've all been holding up okay, and life has been, good and interesting since the last class. So we're doing this course, Becoming Your Best Self. And particularly for today's class, it's a little counterintuitive. It's like becoming your best self doesn't mean that you have to become something other than you are, or even get rid of some stuff. It's just looking at what's happening within us in a different way. And we might find that we actually have everything that we need already. We've just got to know how to frame it, how to look at it. Now, just got to make sure that we don't miss anyone from the waiting room. So I thought what we might do is just a little bit of a recap of what we've already covered, and then ask you how you went with the homework, the reflection sheets. Where are we? So you remember this image, don't you? I hope you do. We'll talk about that in a moment. So in this course, we started off with 3 types of happiness. Now, seeing that happiness isn't just the happy-go-lucky kind of being entertained by life, feeling good. Happiness, really the happiness we're striving for is something much deeper. It's a sense of peace within our own mind, of satisfaction within our own mind. And actually, it's not dependent on what happens to us or what we get from outside. It's got to be a state of mind that we develop from within, because if we don't have that, if we don't have that capacity for happiness, doesn't matter, all the good things happen to us, we won't feel good. We looked at, well, what distracts us? And it's the 8 worldly concerns. It's because we're concerned with these really fluctuating things like gain and loss and praise and fame. These things distract us from really what matters to us. And last week we looked at the 3 higher trainings. So these are the essential skills that we need as a human being, but we also need them if we want to become enlightened. And so the analogy was of this picture. So ethics, you remember, it's like being embodied. We have to embody our ethics. So ethics is like the foundation, it's the core strength. It's the big, strong torso. And if we have ethics as our core strength, then we can accomplish anything. But if we don't have ethics as a core strength, it doesn't matter how smart we are or what we do, we're not going to be able to follow things through. Concentration, the 2 arms. And I mean, even that's got a nice kind of flavor to it as well, because like Venerable Rabina often says, the 2 wings of a bird, wisdom and compassion, the 2 sides. So the concentration holds our focus, and it's backed up by our core strength of ethics. And what the focus is wisdom. It's like the axe that can cut the root of suffering. And as you know, if we have a blunt axe or if we have weak arms, then an axe is a dangerous thing. But if we're strong, if we're focused, if we have a good grip, if we don't lose our train of thought, we will be able to cut the root of suffering. We won't come to wrong conclusions. So a couple of the wrong conclusions, we probably all had this when we were young. You know, the first time we fell in love, and then the first time that we were betrayed, we fell out of love. And then we went, I'm never going to fall in love again. I'm never going to have a relationship with anyone ever again. So, I mean, that's like an erroneous conclusion, isn't it? Because it's not like we can't have relationships. We depend on relationships with others to survive, and we depend on love to survive. But when we get hurt, we kind of come to this wrong conclusion. I know the answer is to never have a relationship again, rather than to think, oh, maybe there's a better way to have them. So last week, the reflection sheets it's fairly simple, and one of them was the shopping homework. Did anyone remember to do that when you go shopping, to look at the labels rather than the things? Or did it just totally escape our minds? Where is everyone? Let's have a look. There was a couple of things. There was the wisdom one, was going shopping and just seeing if you can look at the display rather than get sucked into the thing. And notice what happens to your eyes. You know, they're drawn either up. Normally they're drawn to the middle of the shelves, but do you go up, do you go down? And just to see if you catch yourself going through that process where the advertisers, they well and truly know how we're going to respond. But did any of us catch ourselves doing it? Nobody? Well, don't you have some great big shopping blitz thing coming up in a day or something? Yeah. Or is that, I thought in Australia we've got some shopping day coming up that's like.
Well, that was last week.
Oh, that was last week, and you didn't remember to do it. Oh, well, okay. So what else then? Anything else that came up last week that you'd like to mention? Does that mean everything's going swimmingly well?
Yep.
Not too sure how to take that.
Well, can I share about concentration?
Yeah, Peggy, go for it.
That was because the shopping one was kind of hard for me, because I don't shop much, and it was only food related, and so I don't food related shopping. But the meditation was one of the other things that we were supposed to work on, this concentration. And I'm just going to share briefly a experience I had. I went to a sound bath at a cathedral in San Francisco, which I had never been a part of, and I'm not sure if any of you have done that. But the whole, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Nada yoga? Nada?
Yoga Nidra.
Nidra.
Okay, Yoga Nidra. So the whole idea was and it was at Grace Cathedral, for those of you who are kind of local here at Land of Medicine Buddha. But the idea was to bring a yoga mat, and then there was a band that played different kinds of sounds. And the whole idea was to get in a meditative state for 90 minutes and be so deep in that consciousness that when thoughts came in, you were able to block them out, so that eventually the goal was that you would actually hear your own breathing, your own capillaries, the blood flowing, and all that kind of stuff. This was my first experience, but my point is that I listened to the sounds, and it was a good meditative form for me, and the concentration, because I have a lot of trouble concentrating And I think a lot of that honestly is social media for me. And, anyway, that's a whole different story. But nothing came in my mind. The music did, which is the whole point of it. So what I need to be able to do is have that same meditative stance or experience without music, because whenever my mind would wander that night, I went back to the music that was being provided for me.
Yeah, that's right. So it's kind of like from a Buddhist point of view, we can think of it as like a preliminary, so and there's nothing wrong with getting some help with this. So I think things like sound bath, or even, just going to a concert, like I go to concerts as part of my kind of stay sane therapy, because having the music wash over you gives your mind some kind of break. And if it's really nice music, it's a nice peaceful break. But so from a Buddhist point of view, that's just the beginning point. That's not the end point. So it's like there's nothing wrong with it, but we can't become overly reliant on it, because mostly what we're relying on is a sense of peace that is coming from outside, which is that one of our senses is completely engaged, listening. Yeah. And so, of course, it gives all the rest a chance to breathe, a chance to kind of release, because our mind is engaged in a particular way. And it's quite a nice, calming, peaceful way. Another time that happens is when we go and we look at a really expansive view. So our sight is completely, drawn outwards right to the edges of the earth, and that sense is really filled up, and so the rest of it can kind of diminish. So it's a very good start, and it gives us a taste for, a feeling of being peaceful, not being agitated. But you're absolutely right, Peggy. What we've got to be able to do is, in the end, be able to get to that feeling ourselves, not through our senses.
Right.
And so also because of course, it's easier to focus on something. In a way, it's called attention capture. And what we're trying to do is actually harness the power of our concentration, which is to put our concentration somewhere. Whereas something like music, our concentration is captured.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so easy.
Exactly.
So it's got its place for sure. And it can have a very profound effect on us, especially sound, because it is a very subtle form. And so it does work on our subtle body. And that's why it has quite a profound effect on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that happened to me this week. That was my
So very nice. Just have it as another string to your bow. So I find, and we'll look at this today as well, that when we're so agitated and everything by life, we can't just sit down and go, right, be calm.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to kind of edge into it. Just like you can't just go from 0 to running at 100 kilometers an hour. You have to do some kind of warm up. So all of these things, there's all different types of preliminary warm ups. And so one of them just being able to relax. So relax your body through yoga, or through a sound, or through going for a walk, or looking at a view. And then that makes some conducive conditions in our body and mind to then be able to focus our mind gently.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's too rough. We're going to do ourselves an injury.
Right.
So anyway, it sounds spectacular. A sound bath in a cathedral. Wow.
It was amazing.
So I kind of go to the extreme version of that. I try and find all of the organ music concerts that I can find in the cathedrals in Brisbane, and just go get blasted.
Yeah. Well, that's the way this was. But sounds are interesting too. If it's music and there's singing and stuff like that, then my mind goes with the singing and do I know that song and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Sounds were
right.
a whole different thing for me.
Well,
And
I think
yeah,
that's the thing about sound that, and especially with music that doesn't have words to it, is that it gives us a rest from discursive thought. So
yeah,
all the time we have discursive thought going around and around and around in our mind, in the background, conversations, grudges, blah, 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 blah. And so music, it captures our attention and it takes us away from that. And so there is this incredible relief to be able to
mhm,
experience something and go through a process without putting discursive thought into it. I mean, it's quite healing just to be able to have that kind of break. We all need it for sure.
mhm, mhm.
And it's a shortcut to it. So it gives us kind of a feeling of what it's like.
Right, right.
So excellent. Thank you for bringing that up,
Thank
Peggy.
you.
How excellent.
Thank you.
And Susan, did you have anything to say? You've got your yes. Go for it.
Thank you, Miffi. I'm just thinking what Peggy's been talking about, and that reminds me of the Tibetan sound bowls, which
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be able to have one, but I've never found one that I can afford. So, just like Peggy, I
Yeah.
find it very difficult to concentrate on my breathing. And I know that I'm supposed to let thoughts come and just say thinking or something like that and let them fade away. But I feel it would be much more helpful if I could do what Peggy's just done.
As a warm-up, that's right. So actually,
Yes.
I mean, at Library Tapas Centre, we've got a couple of the yoga sound bath things coming up. So keep an eye out.
Right, I'll
I'm
do
sure
that.
you'll be able to find one. They're quite popular at the moment. So
Good.
let's do really simple meditation to set our motivation and get started today. Actually, I'll just share with you what we're going to look at today and then we'll do the meditation. So today what we're going to have a look at is the hidden wisdom in anxiety and depression. So those uncomfortable states of mind that we so loathe and detest, there is hidden wisdom in there. So how to find that wisdom. We're going to briefly have a look at, well, what are the causes for depression and anxiety? And there are range of causes. And then some radical cures. From a Buddhist point of view, radical cures and perspectives, it's a really quite a different approach than a Western approach, and I find very liberating. So it's a good addition. I like the Western approach, but I found it never goes far enough. So because the theme today is finding the wisdom in anxiety and depression, I thought we'd do a little meditation. It's a very simple one, the Seed of Light meditation, and it's particularly good if you suffer from depression. That heavy or dull or sad, depressed mind. This meditation is really nice for that. So let's just do a very simple version of it, and then we can set our motivation. So settling the posture, really simple two-part posture, a straight spine and a relaxed body. And to straighten the spine from the inside rather than artificially, imagine that there's like a thread of light that runs from the base of your spine up through your body and out the crown of your head. And it's as if you're being pulled up by that thread of light. And if you feel your whole posture naturally extending upwards, you'll be able to adjust your posture so it's straighter but still keeping the natural curvature of the body. And when you exhale, let your shoulders drop and let all the tension of the day fall off the shoulders. And now just gently bring your focus just to the breath. You don't have to kind of do anything to the breath, just become aware that you're breathing. And as you bring your focus inwards, again, we'll become aware of that thread of light. And now imagine that that thread of light inside your body is about the width of your little finger. And in Buddhism, it's often called the central channel. And it's transparent and hollow and very radiant, like neon, but very soft and supple. And it runs straight down through the center of your body, just in front of the spinal column, from the base of your spine up to the crown of your head. And if you're familiar with this meditation, you might be aware that there are also two side channels, parallel, but mostly we're focusing on this central channel. So gently shift your focus to the central channel at the level of your navel. And imagine your mind enclosed within a tiny round seed. And this round seed, the upper hemisphere is white and the lower hemisphere is red. And it's there in the middle of the central channel at the level of your navel. So try and become aware of this little round seed until your mind has quietened down. And try and feel that your perspective is from that place of where the seed is. It's not that your eyes are looking down at it, but that's where you are. And even though this little round seed is very small, it's very clear. And as your mind has quietened down and you're aware of this little round seed, it shoots your central channel and out through the crown of your head, up into the sky. And the seed opens and your mind merges with vast empty space. Recognize how your mind is like vast radiant space, in which all experiences can arise and fall away. Your nature is like that, vast and clear. It's not reducible to any one thought or feeling, infinitely spacious. So within this spaciousness, we can set our motivation today to clear the clouds of depression and anxiety, to let the clean, clear nature of your mind naturally shine forth. And then you can gently open your eyes if they're closed and bring your focus back to the room. So this meditation, it's very simple. It takes a little bit of practice to do, but really effective to lift the mind, to really help us. It's like that inner experience of that vast view that we so crave. So let's dive in now to causes for depression and anxiety. So there are multiple causes, and I think I'll just go through them so that we can get an idea. There's a whole spectrum. So first off, when we're looking for causes of depression and anxiety, start on the easy things. Start on the most obvious, the physical things. Is there an organic cause? So is there something, there's a change in brain chemistry, environment, diet, acquired brain injury. So even something like you've had too much sugar and then you have a sugar rush and then you have a sugar crash. If we're not aware that's what's happened, I mean, look at kiddies with too much red cordial at the party. This is what happens, and it's like the whole world collapses. So we, even just something as innocuous as diet and how much sugar we have really has a profound effect on us. Other things for changes in brain chemistry are things like PMT, what did they used to call the baby blues, now it's postnatal depression. So when there's massive hormonal changes, and it profoundly affects how we feel. But because we think we are our feelings, we identify with it, and then we feel guilty and we feel bad, and the whole thing just gets compounded even more. Also, things like environmental poisoning. We may not know that that's what's happening. I had friends who were living next to a car detailing place, and they had an illegal exhaust fan, and so she'd go and she'd have a rest in the afternoon, and open the window to get some breeze, and the exhaust from the car place would come straight into her room. And over the course of a couple of years, she was basically poisoned, and she didn't know. And so we can go through all of this incredible soul-searching turmoil, like what's wrong with me, but it's actually worth our while to check, is something physically going on? So the only reason she knew something was going on was that they wanted to get a little puppy to train as a guide dog. You know how they have the guide dogs come? And so the guide dog people come and check out the place for environmental hazards to see if you're going to be good enough to host the puppies. And they did a chemical analysis of the place and said, this place is toxic, you can't have the puppy. And that was the first that they knew about it. So check organically, is there something going on? And that also means, for instance, my father, who was he was first trumpet in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra for years and years and years. And after, I don't know, like 25, 30 years, he started getting stage fright. And he couldn't believe it. Like, what's going on here? And again, went through all of this internal investigation. Nothing seemed to work. But, he's a bit of a bloke, right? So eventually he went to the doctor about something else. It turns out that he developed high blood pressure. And so all this anxiety and everything was from high blood pressure. So he took his high blood pressure tablets and the stage fright disappeared. So it's worth starting at the easy, obvious one. And then then if it's none of those things, then we look deeper. So, I mean, so when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was in Australia one time, and someone asked, what is the cause for depression? And he said, because there are multiple causes, then also there's going to have to be multiple cures, multiple ways of approaching it. There's no one thing. With the disturbing emotions, it's much simpler. There's a cause for anger, a cause for attachment, and there's an antidote for them, and it's really quite obvious. But depression and anxiety, they're quite a mixed bunch. So the next thing after checking is an organic cause is by checking, is it a response to events? So if we are living in a violent situation, of course we're going to be distressed. If we're feeling particularly helpless, of course we're going to feel distressed. If there's been a death in the family, if we've got the threat of eviction hanging over our head the whole time, actual traumatic events, many times though, we might discount them or not even realize, actually, this is a heavy situation that I'm in, because we're just so involved in coping with it. We don't recognize there's something fundamentally wrong here. What else? Moving house. Moving house is a really stressful thing to do, losing one's job. And then along with that, one's identity and one's security and all of these things. So then having anxiety or depression, it's a legitimate kind of response. It's a depressing situation. But if we analyze all of that and go, no, there's nothing particularly terrible going on, then we've got to look deeper. And that's when we start looking within our own mind. And the next level is looking at the negative habit patterns that we have, our automatic responses. And often these are responses that we might have responded like that as a child, and now as an adult, we continue to respond in that same way. And it's really out of date with ourselves in a way. So if we were actually, legitimately neglected as a child, and then as an adult, we become super sensitive to that. And so if we arrange to have coffee with somebody and they're late, we're going to get triggered just because of the habit. That's what we're used to. And so all of these things will start going through our mind, that I'm no good and that everybody's going to betray me and all of these things. And actually, they just missed the bus. But before we know it, we've kicked into that cycle. So it's a real it's a habit pattern that runs on its own. And many times, how we respond to a situation, we're not even aware that it's happening. And that's what we're doing. We're just triggered and we kick into this old habit. And it has very little to do with the situation. Other examples of this is if something quite traumatic happens to you at a very specific time of year, every time that time of year rolls around, it's all going to come flooding back again. So one time at the bus stop, little old lady that I was talking to on the bus stop, and she just said she just hated Christmas. And I'm like, well, because I love all the baubles and the this and the that. I've got great associations with Christmas. And she's saying, no, her father died at the Christmas dinner table when she was a kid. And so it was such a traumatic and such a dramatic thing to happen, have a heart attack at the Christmas dinner table, that, for normal people in a normal situation, it might take several years to get over. But because it was associated with Christmas, every time Christmas comes along, the whole story comes along. And so every single Christmas, she would be re-triggered. The whole thing would come back again and again until she just hated it. So it's a real tragedy. Sometimes at a particular time of year, like if someone's died at the changing of a season, that season changes and you get really, really sad because you think that it all comes back when that person died. It all comes together. And then once this becomes a habit, then it becomes really ingrained. It's very difficult to shift. The other thing we can look even deeper than that, though, is that what drives all of that, it's not just simply habit, but it's actually afflictive mind states that afflict us. And they're all of the disturbed emotions, the exaggerations, the expectations, the aversion, the hatred, revenge, guilt, all of those things, the disturbing emotions, mistaken states of mind, distorted attitudes and beliefs. Because we have those, all the rest arises and gets us in its grip. So in a way, when we're looking at depression and anxiety, That's not the problem. It's a symptom. And that's a real key, because mostly when we experience an unpleasant feeling, we just want to get rid of it. We think it's the problem. We want to get rid of it. We get depression. We want to get rid of it. We have anxiety. We don't want it. And we think that's the problem. Actually, it's not. It's the symptom. It's just like with the flu. You know, you get the flu, and like I've got a touch of the flu. Everybody else has got a touch of the flu. And how do you know you've got the flu? Because you have a fever or you're sore. And so what do we normally do? When we get the flu, we take lots of painkillers and try and pretend it's not happening, isn't it? And we soldier on. But you know, what actually happens is we get sicker because we don't rest. And not only that, we give it to everybody else because we've been soldiering on and we've been spreading all of our disturbing emotions and all of our flu germs with everybody else. So the whole thing, when you get the flu, you start feeling bad, like you want to crawl into a little ball, because actually rest is the most important thing to do to get over it. And it's going to help us rest. And not only that, when we have all of those aches and pains, when we have a fever, we think that's a bad thing, but actually that's a sign that our body is kicking in, trying to deal with the flu. It's a sign that everything is working as it should. So in the same way, depression and anxiety are a sign that something is wrong. They're not the thing that's wrong. They're the symptoms. They're showing us something is wrong, and we really have to pay attention, or it's just going to get worse. So, questions, comments? How are we going so far? Make sense? Okay. I'll get the little slide up again. Okay, so response to events, family violence, feeling helpless, death in a family, negative habit patterns, reflective states of mind. But what we've got to remember, depression, stress, and anxiety are symptoms of us having disturbing emotions, afflictive states of mind. They're not the cause. They're the evidence something's wrong. And because there are many types of disturbing emotions, we have to figure out which is the one that's actually caused it. Just like there's different strains of the flu, there's different viruses that you can get. So it's no good being treated for one when you have the other. We've got to actually figure out what is actually the disturbing emotion that has caused this problem. And it could be attachment, it could be pride, it could be mistaken views and assumptions. This is where we have to be able to do the analysis. So because there are many disturbing emotions, there's no one cure for these symptoms of depression and anxiety. So let's first look at the depression side of things and how to listen to what depression is telling us. Now, here is something very interesting. Neurologically, there is no difference between sadness and depression. Now, isn't that strange? Because we all think that they're two different things, don't we? We have two different words for them. We can probably recognize both, and they have a different quality, a different feeling to them, grief and depression. So what do you reckon? What's the difference between the two? No right or wrong answer here. What comes to mind?
Well, I think sadness is, like related to a particular event, and depression, is like long term.
Yep. Yeah. So, and by long term, you mean that you can't quite even identify an event?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
my experience.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. Peggy?
Oh no, that's what I was going to say.
That was, yep, yeah, interesting. So, if someone very close to you has passed away, that sadness as well can last for a very, very long time. I think with grieving, with sadness, when I was growing up in Melbourne, I remember so there's heaps of Greeks and Italians around, and a lot of the women wore all black, and I was asking, why do they all wear all black? And my mother said, oh, it's because their husband died, so they wear black for the rest of their life. So that's how long it goes for. And then the younger women, they would wear black for a year. And it's kind of nice in a way because it gives you a whole year where you can grieve, where you're allowed to, where you can be gentle to yourself with those feelings. So then apparently with all of the diagnostic manuals from the medical profession in Australia, up until about, I don't know, 10 years ago, I think you could grieve for about 6 weeks. If you hadn't finished grieving after 6 weeks, then it was medicalized. Now you need drugs. So 6 weeks was seen as legit. And then it was like, okay, then now we'll give you medication to get over it. But what's so bizarre is that just a few years ago, they've changed it to 2 weeks. So this is like this really insidious creep of medicalizing what's a natural process of being sad. And actually, there was a New Yorker magazine study about people who were grieving, who someone very close to them had died, and they asked them, would you rather go through this grieving process, or would you rather take a pill and not feel any sadness? And every single one of them said, no, I want to go through the grieving process. So that I find really interesting. That's a real key there, because grieving, being sad, it's a horrible, horrible feeling. So why would someone say, no, I would rather do that and grieve for my husband or wife than take a pill and be how I'll feel in a year's time? So this is what gives us a key. So if we're looking at grief or sadness, we've got, when we're sad, we do naturally develop empathy for others. So if we come across somebody else who is also grieving, our heart extends to them naturally. We don't even have to try. We know what they're going through, and we can be a really good support just in terms of company. We become a better person for it. Through grief and sadness, we actually become a better person. We become kinder to others. We naturally become more connected to others because we actually see that we're in the same boat, and it's not just me and my suffering. We become more able to help others just through the actual fact that we've been able to live through it and withstand it. We understand. And our grief or sadness can be useful to us and to others. We see that it has a purpose. So especially when we're grieving somebody, it's because we kind of feel they're worth it. They were so important that it's worth us thinking about them and thinking about the loss to the world and what they contributed while they were alive and all of these things. They were worth it. They meant something. So all of this somehow seems to legitimize grief and sadness, not just as a society thing, but for us to be able to accept it as meaningful, even if it's painful. Depression, on the other hand, as Venerable Robina says, it's very neurotic. It's a self-focused. It's all about me. It doesn't extend us to others. We don't have more empathy for others when we're depressed. We're kind of collapsing in on ourselves. In fact, we're probably not even interested in others. because of that, we become emotionally stagnant and alienated from others. So it's actually almost the opposite of grief or sadness. We feel very alone, very isolated. We are unaware of the distress that we're causing others, the distress of our friends and our loved ones who want to be able to help us and can't, and we can't even see that we're causing them distress. And what's so debilitating about depression is that we feel it has no apparent benefit. We can't see any purpose to it. So you see, they're these quite opposite sides of things. But neurologically, what's happening is exactly the same. So the key here is that it's how we're looking at it. That means either it's really dysfunctional and alienating, or that it makes us a better human being. And part of it is that when we're depressed, we can't see any point to it. We can't see any use in it. There's no meaning for us. And it's probably because we haven't discerned the meaning yet, not because there is no meaning. But whilst we can't find meaning in it, then it is useless. And then we fight against it and we don't want it. And the whole time that we're fighting against it and don't want it makes it stronger. That's the great tragedy of it. That by going, I don't like it, I don't want it, I don't like it, go want it, that actually solidifies it, pushes up against it and solidifies it. So in a nutshell, with grief or sadness, we're focused on the other, really. And with depression, we're focused on me. It's quite neurotic. With sadness, it actually makes us acutely aware and connected to others and aware of the experience of others and actually care about others. So if you've ever had someone close to you die and then one of your friends, the same thing happens, you don't have to think, oh, I want to be a good person. You naturally, your heart extends to them because you know what it's like. So it automatically makes us a better person. So how about that? How does that sit with everybody? Yes, Mary.
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense because you know, like I experienced depression and it just everything you're saying just sounds very accurate. And I guess, you know, I need to think maybe part of the way that I can get through it is to think, well, you know, I really am affecting other people negatively by being depressed. So, you know, like that's an angle where I think I could maybe grow a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Your care for others can help pull you out from that. Because like I've been both depressed and also I've lived with someone who's been depressed. And honestly, living with someone who's depressed is worse. It's just because now you feel completely helpless. It's a miserable existence. You can't help them and they're completely shut off. And so I've kind of had both kind of experiences. I think from being depressed, in a way, we've got to have courage to really be depressed and not just depressed, but sad. Because in a way, being depressed is where we can't bear the hurt or the grief or the sadness. And so we push it down. So courage for actually what's going on underneath. I mean, many times depression happens. It's this terrible cycle where we get really upset about something, often injustices to oneself or others or the world. And we get so upset about it and so hurt that we get angry. And then we're so shocked at our anger that we push it down. And that pushes everything down. And then we're into a state of depression where everything's just foggy and amorphous. And it's come from this initial thing of being really upset and they're not knowing what to do with the upsetness. So I'd say courage to be upset. And what gives us courage is to recognize there is meaning in it, and there is something that we can do. One of the things about depression is that feeling of helplessness, isn't it? That it's just like it's out of our control. We don't even know what's happening, and it's just going to go on forever. And so we have no sense of agency. The other thing about depression too is we're often blaming others. And of course, once we do that, then we give away all of our power as well. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche had 3 Buddha's cures for depression, and they are radical. They're radical cures. They're not your ordinary type of day-to-day worldly kind of Western medicine cures. They're completely counterintuitive, and they're really effective. So let's have a look at these, because what I would say is they can help us along with everything else that helps us. Self-help groups and books and counseling and medication, everything, but then also these. So first one, remembering death and impermanence. So in a way, self-help books and groups and things like that will say this too will pass. In other words, remember impermanence, and that is true. It will pass. Inevitably, it will pass, and we can take comfort in that. But there's something further that we can go, which is actually to remember death is coming as well. And if we have a near-death experience, if we come near to death, depression vanishes. And in fact, in places where there's war and conflict and real outright violence, there is fear and upset, but there's no time for depression. Depression just doesn't happen. Because in a way, depression and all of those feelings, even suicidal thoughts, they come about because we are grasping at permanence. So Rinpoche actually says, you know, if you're thinking, even in suicidal thoughts, change it around to think, what if I did die today? Because underneath that thought, I want to end my life, is a thought, it's not going to end. And that's why I want to end it. We want to take some control and agency over it. But if we actually think, oh my gosh, I don't even know, maybe I will die today. Am I ready? Everything changes. So that's why they call it, like, the near-death experiences, they're a real wake-up call. You know, you're in a car accident and you don't die, and it's like, oh, phew. It's a real wake-up call. Things become very clear. And why that happens is because we just, without even knowing it, we grasp at permanence. We think not only our depression will live forever, but we'll live forever. And so we have to do something about it to end it. No way. These things are not guaranteed. Who knows? Who of us will be alive and who will be dead at the end of today? We don't know. So it's much better to take that realistic point of view on board. So I told you it was counterintuitive, incredibly radical. It's a big picture, this one. So the second one that Rinpoche said was, experience your depression on behalf of others. Think, this is not my depression. Focus on the suffering of others who are just like you. So experience it for others. So this is really good when depression's already set in and there's nothing you can do about it. Then it's like, bring it on. I'm going to experience this depression for everybody. I'm going to go through it for everybody. Both in a theatrical way, like imagining that you're taking on the depression of your friends, the depression of your children, the depression of, you know, everybody else who you know that is depressed. Give it to me, I'll carry it. I'll do it. I may as well, I'm already this depressed, I may as well have yours too. So that is a really lovely attitude to develop. Because what it does is it changes this dynamic. Instead of us going, no, I don't want it, now we're going, give it to me. And changing that dynamic changes everything, because we get our agency back. We stop actually fighting against it, which is what makes it stronger in the first place. We are naturally working against all of that neurotic egocentricity. Now suddenly our depression has a use. We can experience it for other people. And even just psychologically, if you think I'm going to experience this for others, you become very aware, what's happening to my mind? What does it feel like? How bad is it? So that when you talk to somebody else who's depressed, you're not frightened by it. You're not repulsed by it. You're brave and courageous and can share it with them and help them. Because, many times with distress, when we see people who are distressed or ill or depressed, we get a bit repulsed by it. Like, we don't want to be contaminated by them. But with this attitude, I'm going to experience my depression on behalf of others, then it's not going to contaminate us. Then anybody who's depressed, we can sit with them, we can be with them and share the burden, and we'll have the courage to do so. And it also helps us then, instead of ignoring the feelings of others, ignoring how we affect others around us, now suddenly we start feeling connected again. So one of the things that I remember, when COVID first hit all those years ago now, and just noticed that my computer is not plugged in. Hang on a sec. My battery's going lower and lower. Okay. So when they were talking about COVID and they were saying unprecedented times, you remember that word? It was just all over the news. And I was thinking, actually, it wasn't unprecedented at all, but pretty much things don't really exist until they exist for us. Once it happens to us, then we go, oh my God. Yeah. So I remember in the 80s when AIDS first hit. So AIDS was like COVID. It was this unknown pandemic that spread around the world. But it was actually worse because there was all of this stigma and hatred associated with it. It was dangerous as well, as the disease itself. And I started feeling, wow, so all these people that lived through that whole AIDS, HIV era, and now COVID's come along and everyone's going, oh my God, it's unprecedented. They're going to feel it's not unprecedented at all. It's within living memory. But because it just happened to one section of society, it's as if it didn't happen. It's just when it happens to us, then we become aware. So in a way, what this means is, until we suffer, we are not aware of suffering with others. Until we suffer, we are not aware that other people suffer. Until we have a headache, we have no idea what other people are going through when they have a headache. If you went to a doctor with migraine and you had migraines and that doctor had never had a migraine, would you trust them? No way. But suddenly, once we have a migraine, now we understand and now we can connect with everybody else. And before that, we're oblivious. So actually, before we experience depression, we're very impatient with people. Before we experience sadness or grief, we're very impatient. We're just, someone's a bit sad and we say, oh, come on, get over it, hurry up. Aren't you over it yet? There's no compassion there at all. Once you've experienced it, now suddenly there's compassion. It's kind of effortless. So your depression can be highly meaningful. You can experience it for others, to benefit others. And then you can use it as a meditation. By experiencing this depression, may everybody else be free of all suffering and enjoy happiness. I'm experiencing the depression for them. How wonderful I'm able to do it. Questions, comments? Susan, did you have something? No? Okay. So the last one for this then is give your depression to your ego. Put the blame in the right place. Give depression and anxiety to your ego, not to your best self. So this means, you know, we do have this kind of instinctual urge to want to blame. It's your fault. We really don't want to take on the responsibility ourselves. So we can go with that momentum and, okay, lay the blame, but lay the blame in the right place. So it's not your fault out there. It's not my parents' fault, and it's not society's fault. And it's also not my fault, as in, you know, me trying to be a good person, my fault. It's ego's fault. And we are not our ego. Our ego, all of those self-cherishing thoughts and afflictive emotions and the neuroses and all of that, that's like this whole distorted version, and that's not us. So give it to that. Give it to the ego monster, not to you, not to your best self, not to that fledgling, wonderful human being that's trying to develop into a Buddha. Give it to the ego, the self-cherishing thought, the neurotic thought. And so then you can place the blame in the right place. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche often says, you know, what makes us harm others is the ego. The ego, a million times more harmful than any external terrorist. So it's feeding that ego and defending it and holding grudges and all of those kind of things. That's where we should lay the blame. But often when we say, oh, you bring it on yourself, you've got to be really careful that that's which self are you talking about? Because it's not your best self. When we say, oh, we bring it on ourselves, who brings it? It's the ego that brings it on ourselves. So blame the ego. Even when we do Tonglen meditation, you know, that you take on the sufferings onto yourself. It's a very specific self. It's the ego self. It's not your best self. You put it where lay the blame firmly where it actually deserves to be. So that's just to get going with 3 highly radical cures for depression. Yeah, Mary, question.
You know, when I think about depression, sometimes like I think this is a result of my karma, and this, you know, and I think this is because of bad, you know, I've done this in the past to others. So but you know, so I think it's a result of my karma, but I don't know, like it's somehow uncomfortable, like it's an uncomfortable thought, you know, and then you know, so I think that it's my fault. You're like,
I know, that's right. It's because we do it all too quickly. So it's not your fault, as in you, Buddha nature, caring, feeling human being. No, it's not that fault. So Geshe Zopa, when he talks about karma and delusion, he has, I think I was saying this last week, this very nuanced way of saying we're under others' power. So it's the fault of karma and delusion is others' power. It's a force other than ourselves. So yes, it's the fault of our karma and delusion, but your karma and delusion is not you. The karma and delusion are all of those distorted states of mind, the momentum and the results of those distorted states of mind, and that continues on. So it's kind of, yeah, we've got to be very careful when we say, oh, it's my karma. So we're not in control of our karma. We're not in control of our afflictive states of mind. So they just run their own race, and we experience the devastating consequences of it. But to say that it's our fault is kind of wrong. No, it's the fault of ego. It's the fault of self-cherishing and self-grasping. And it's really to do with who is it that we're going to identify with. And it's far better to identify with your Buddha potential, your Buddha nature, with your innate goodness, your innate potential to become fully enlightened and awake. If you're going to identify with being anybody, that's who you should identify with. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Mary, because in practice, it's hard to catch yourself doing it. So probably the safe way to do it is whenever you're saying me and mine, ask which me and mine.
And I just like to say this is really hitting home for me right now, and I'm getting a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
I'm so pleased. Thank you so much, Mary, because I've just given everything I've got. So, and I really hope I can put a convincing case and be as clear as I possibly can. So here's a little question. So how interested are we in the welfare of others? So this is what I do to kind of wake myself up out of the depression. Is I just take my own internal temperature in a way. How interested am I in the welfare of others or in my own welfare? And if it's just all about me, I know I've collapsed in on myself, and that's no good for anybody. So that's how I take that internal temperature. It's not like a judgmental thing. It just gives you an idea of whereabouts you are on this spectrum from sadness to depression. And sadness, it's horrible, but it has an incredible use, because without it, we don't have compassion. So here's another one. Okay, on the other side of things, anxiety. So again, there's a difference between anxiety and fear. And fear actually, it can accurately reflect a situation. Some situations are honestly fearful, they're frightening. And it's important that we do feel fear because it helps keeps us safe. So just recently, I went off to our national meeting, the FPMT national meeting down in Melbourne at Tara Institute. And to get there from where we were, you have to cross this enormous intersection. And it's like a 8-lane highway from one direction, 8 lanes from another direction, a couple of lanes from there, maybe 5 coming in. There's multiple islands and pedestrian bits. And some of the ways that the road is set out, it looks like the cars are coming head on with each other, but one turns this way and one turns the other. And you've got to cross this road to get there. And so the first time I'm like, oh, I'm just going to jaywalk. Big mistake, because I didn't realize that even though it looked all the cars were coming from this way, they're also coming from this way as well. So I got quite a shock. And it's good that I got a shock, because after that, then I was quite fearful, and I paid great attention to crossing the multitude roads to get to the other side. So actually it takes 5 times that you push the button to go across that bit of the road, then to that bit of the road, then you're in the middle of the island, there's cars whizzing by on either side. And I remembered actually years ago I'd been visiting there with my blind friend, and he had managed to get to Tara Institute whilst blind and crossing that road. And I just thought, far out, man, that is brave. But we need to have some fear or we're not safe. And this is why parents get so upset, with their kids, because they don't have any fear. They're just running around, and it's really dangerous. So fear, again, it's one of those things. It's unpleasant, but it is very important. So would we want to get rid of all fear? No way. because we would end up doing stupid things that would cost us our lives or our. So then what's the go with anxiety? What's the difference between fear and anxiety? What do you reckon? Anyone got an idea? I mean, in a way, anxiety feels like it's a low level fear that goes on continuously, doesn't it? I suppose you can have flashes of anxiety and dread.
Well, I was just going, can you hear me, Miffi?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that fear is more immediate and anxiety is long term.
Yeah, so
That's the
that's
way
a
I
little
look at it.
similar, yeah, to like the depression and the sadness. It seems like the depression goes on and on and on. And same with anxiety, it feels like it goes on and on and on.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's definitely a point there. So with anxiety, I mean, I just found out recently one of the very interesting things looking at, because for a couple of years I woke up every morning with this absolutely debilitating feeling of dread. I would wake up with dread and adrenaline surging through me every day for 2 years, maybe longer. Anyway, I found out that's one of the symptoms of menopause, is waking up every morning with a feeling of dread. It's an actual physiological thing that happens with your hormones. So that blew my mind, but that was really good to know. Oh, okay, this is an organic cause, so it's not all me. It's got an organic component to it. And it kind of makes sense too, because you think, oh, how can something organic bring up a feeling of dread? Well, actually, in Australia there are these blue bottle fish, you know, with the big, long, stringy tentacles, and they sometimes they'll all wash up. Like in Sydney, you'll see them on Bondi Rescue, and if the tentacles get onto you, it's incredibly painful. And the poison in those tentacles will make you absolutely overwhelmed with a feeling of dread for 20 minutes. That's what it does. So all the lifeguards know if someone gets all the tentacles of these jellyfish wrapped around them, that they are going to feel like the world is ending and they're going to die, and they're totally debilitated by dread. And after about 20 minutes, it goes. So totally intense. So anyway, so there are organic causes. It's not always like that, but they are in there. So with anxiety, of course, then we think with anxiety, oh, it must be an out of proportion response to a situation as we see as negative or with no benefit. So we have this dread and fear response, and it's continuous, and it burns out our adrenal glands, and we can't see what the situation is that's causing the fear. There's no blue bottle sting. There's no menopausal hormones. There's no crossing the road. What is it? Why am I so riven with anxiety or with social anxiety? So we feel it's out of proportion, and so we feel bad and guilty about it on top of it. And of course, if we exaggerate it, if we dive right into those feelings of anxiety and start telling the story of them as well, like we are really all doomed and we are really going to die and this is the worst time in history and everything's terrible, and then we find all the news items that support that, and then we ruminate on it again and again and again, you can see this is a terribly toxic cycle. And then it becomes a habit. And so then we end up practicing trauma. Instead of practicing tranquility, now we're practicing trauma over and over and over again. So again, anxiety, just like depression, it's not the problem. It's the symptom of the problem. It's showing that there is a problem somewhere, and here is the symptom. Just like having a fever or achy body, it's not the flu, it's the symptom of the flu. And it actually shows that we're already starting the healing process. But because we get so overwhelmed by how unpleasant it is, we just want to get rid of it. So we miss the message. We miss the meaning in it. So actually, I was thinking, I've spent a lot of time thinking about dread, for instance, dread and anxiety with menopause. And I'm thinking, well, of course, it's starting to become very apparent to you that life is finite. And this feeling of dread comes along because what have I done with my life? Now there is less life ahead of me than there is behind me. And what have I done? There's a huge amount left undone. There's a huge amount that I regret. There's a huge amount yet to do. And where have I got? And how much have I been distracted? So that feeling of dread is legitimate. And rather than going, I don't want to feel that feeling of dread, it's actually better to recognize what's it telling us. I am mortal. I don't know when I'm going to die. It could be really soon. Am I ready? No way. That's what it's telling us. So once you get to that, I am not ready to die. Now we've got some useful information. But we just want to go, no, we're not going to die. As if so this is again where cognitive fusion comes in. So cognitive fusion feels bad, therefore it is bad. So anxiety feels bad, dread feels bad, therefore it is bad. It's not necessarily the case. Actually, this dread is a very important message, and it's better to get it now than on your deathbed. Also with stress, just simple stress, feeling anxious or stressed. It's not pleasant, but it's essential. Difficulties are not pleasant, but they're essential. And why? Because human beings actually need intermittent stress to grow and develop strength. So this is like if you think about weight training, you know, you're lifting the weights. And how do you know it's working? Because you get sore muscles. If you're lifting weights and you had no sore muscles, has anything happened? There's no way. So you actually need to have some difficulty, some strain and stress, and that builds your fitness. So human beings need stress to grow strong. If we don't have stress, we don't grow any strength whatsoever. But it's a very specific type of stress, which is intermittent stress. And that's just like with weight training. You can't just lift weights for 14 hours in a row. You have to lift weights and then rest. And then you lift weights and then you actually have a day off. So it's intermittent stress. So just like physically we need intermittent stress, emotionally we actually need stress, but not constant unadulterated stress. We need a problem, and then we need a recovery, and then another problem and another recovery. And that way we actually grow in confidence and we grow resilience. And then we get our courage. And then something goes wrong. We don't go, oh no, we go, great, let's see what we can do. And we've got all of our energy. So it's this really particular kind of stress, but because we don't like any kind of difficulty with challenges, we would rather not have them. But actually, they're really good for us, and the sooner the better. Because if we don't have those challenges or problems, when they do eventually come upon us, we've had no practice. So one of my really good friends, she would have been just hitting 30, and her dog was really sick and passed away. And that was the first time in her life that she'd experienced death at the age of 30. And she completely lost it. It just destroyed her for several years. And I mean, in a way, it's because, like, she never had a pet when she was young that died. She didn't even have a goldfish that died. There was no family member had died. So the first time that someone dies and it's her dog that dies, it was such a shock. She had no reserves, no resilience whatsoever to deal with it. And we kind of try and shield our kids from difficulties, from death, from trauma, all of these things. Actually, it's doing them a great disservice, because all of those things happen. And if the first time it happens to you, you're 30 or 40 years old and you've got no strength, it's really devastating. So we stress, it's difficult, but it's not a bad thing. And it'll help us get like match fit for samsara. And this hopefully should help us too, that when difficult things happen, that we can somehow in there, we can know we're going to be able to benefit from this. It's not a completely lost cause. If I'm going to go through this difficulty and this suffering, there is going to be a benefit in there. So actually, resilience is the ability to voluntarily bear suffering and profit from any situation. So to embrace whatever the situation is, whether it's painful or pleasant, and be open to it and really authentic with it. So meanwhile, there's the habit of worry. So there are different ways to deal with the habit of worry, which is that rumination going around and around and around and around, which is pretty out of step with reality. So one of the things, there's a whole list here. So if you've got the slides, I'll put all these out on the list. Mindfulness practice. So a mindfulness of not of the anxiety, but on objects of virtue. Actually, I might just put these all up now, and if you've got your phone, you can take a photo, and then I'll take the screen and share off in a moment. With the habit of worry, it just reminded me that Shanti Deva, he said, if you can do something about the situation, why worry? You just do something about it. And if you can't do anything about the situation, there's no point in worrying. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said to me, every time I'd see him as a child, he'd say, Miffi, don't you worry. And honestly, it was one of the only ways that I could stop worrying was because Rinpoche told me to stop worrying. And it could kind of short circuit it, that it was okay to stop worrying about things. So I've worried about things my entire life, absolutely riven with worry and anxiety. So let's go through some of these handy hints of how to break the habit of worry. So a mindfulness practice, just being mindful, noticing your breath, your posture, the feeling tone, without trying to do anything about it, just kind of becoming aware what's the state of the situation. And then mindfulness meaning remembering, bringing the mind back. Bring your mind back to something virtuous. So not back to the worry. Bring your mind back to gratitude or rejoicing. Thinking about the good deeds of others. Thinking about Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So mindfulness in that respect. Another one is to reframe your anxiety as anticipation. So this is what one of my performer friends said. you know, that so he never got stage fright, and you know, we asked him, how don't you ever get nervous beforehand? And he said, no, I just think of it, I'm just anticipating, I'm just excited. Because physiologically there's no difference between excitement and anxiety. They're the same thing. Physiologically what's happening is the same thing. It's just on one hand we're going, oh no, and on the other hand we're going, oh yay. So before leading a class, I get quite anxious, and then I say to myself, no, I'm anticipating it. I'm excited about it. Actually, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And just that, switching it around in my mind, instead of thinking about all the things of how terrible it is to be anxious, I start thinking about all the good reasons to lead a class. Then it helps me out of it. So reframing, really powerful, especially once it's already going, because once the adrenaline's already going in your system, you can't make it stop. It has to run its course. So then you reframe in your mind as excitement. But another way to calm yourself down is to mimic a posture of being calm. So instead of being all tense, you know, to actually sit back and mimic being relaxed, and open your posture and open the chest and open your arms. And the same way with the breathing, mimic breathing of going to sleep, which is a longer out breath and a shorter in breath. So just those things, it's a physiological hack that then the mind will follow. If you can't do that, then walking, yoga. The worst thing you can do is just sit and talk. That just makes things worse. Actually, sitting, talking, and drinking coffee is probably the worst thing for anxiety altogether. It's better to walk and talk so that you get some movement happening and the energy has somewhere to go. Again, remember, instead of catastrophizing of what if this and what if that, think, well, you know, there is very little control we have over things. Many of those things may happen and I have no control over it. That's true. So what do I have to do to get control over my mind? Which is to make sure that we've said sorry to everybody that we need to, that we've cleaned up those loose ends, that we've done those really important things, that we are focusing on what matters. Because in a way, anxiety shows us that we're out of kilter with reality. We're not focusing on what matters, and that's why we're feeling so agitated. So in a way, listening to your anxiety, a good way to do it is to write it down. So Venerable Rabina often says this, to speak it out. What does your anxiety say? What does your depression say? So if you write it down, there's going to be some wisdom in there, because it'll show you what your biggest fears are. But don't even stop there. Keep writing. Keep asking why. Get to the bottom of it. And I mean, we know we're all going to die one day. So it's not just that that's making us fearful. It's the other things, isn't it? And so your conscience will become very, very clear. And just write it down, and there it is. That's what we should have been looking at this whole time. So if we didn't have the anxiety, we wouldn't know that we are completely distracted by all of the senses and everything that's coming in from the world. And very rarely do we spend time on what actually matters to us. So it's like, thank you, anxiety, for pointing it out. Thank you, dread, for pointing it out. Otherwise, I just would have been happily just wasting my whole life having fun, which is not so bad. But, you know, then when the end of your life comes, then it's like suddenly there's all the regrets. So that anxiety can help us see those regrets before it's too late. Now, I wanted to do a little meditation on this, the finding the wisdom in anxiety and depression. So just before I do, are there any questions about this? Just the handy hints of dealing with anxiety? Are any of them seem useful? Or any questions about it? All seems okay. Well, let's do this meditation. The meditation is called The Storm and the Calm. So taking a comfortable position again, nice straight spine, let your shoulders drop, relaxed body. Allow your breath to settle naturally like a gentle wind across a vast plain. And with each breath, feel yourself becoming more present, more aware of the weather patterns within your mind. And generate a motivation to understand that within every storm of anxiety or depression lies hidden wisdom waiting to be discovered. So imagine a vast sky where clouds are gathering, and these are the familiar sensations of depression approaching. And just as storm clouds carry essential rain, these difficult emotions contain seeds of transformation and understanding. When depression feels heavy, can you sense the potential for compassion beneath the weight? Within the heaviness of depression lies an opportunity to develop deep understanding and empathy for others who suffer. Just as rain transforms parched earth into fertile ground, our suffering can nurture the seeds of wisdom and understanding. So how might you relate differently to depression if you saw it as rain that could soften your heart? And within these heavy clouds, flashes of anxiety appear like lightning, illuminating aspects of your experience that usually remain hidden in darkness. It's like having a powerful searchlight suddenly reveal hidden pathways in a confusing darkness. Each spark of anxiety points to an area in our life calling for investigation and understanding. So what might these lightning flashes of anxiety be trying to show you about your inner landscape? So in your daily life, try to remember that, like the sky, your awareness remains clear, even when temporarily clouded by difficult emotions. So rest in the clarity that remains after the storm, knowing that each weather pattern in your mind carries its own wisdom. And that you carry within you the capacity to transform life's storms into sources of wisdom and compassion. And so we can dedicate the merits of this meditation and the class to being able to embrace the wisdom that's hidden there for the moment in depression and anxiety, and that way to be able to embrace the welfare of all living beings and bring them to a state of lasting happiness along with ourselves. So just as a summary then for today, so the wisdom in anxiety and depression, actually, according to Buddhism, depression and anxiety, well, for one, they're signs that we're out of step with our best self. And they're actually a good sign because they're a sign of your Buddha nature trying to burst forth. And it's difficult because we've been ignoring it. So it's saying, hey, look here, look here. So actually all of the discomfort, it's a good sign. Just like when we have discomfort in our muscles, it's a good sign. And it's showing us exactly where to look. We don't need anybody else to tell us. Wherever our depression and anxiety arises, that's exactly where we need to start investigating. So to have the courage to do so. The fever of your depression can become the path to compassion. This is from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. The fever of your depression, which is a symptom, actually becomes a path to compassion. And to remember that we need stress to become strong and resilient. There's no way we can be resilient or strong or have courage if we don't have problems and stress to practice on. So we need them. So especially the little ones, when they come up, try and embrace them with gusto. And then slowly, slowly, we'll get stronger and stronger and we'll lose our fear of the big ones. So the homework, there's a worksheet, page 16 and 17. It's kind of just an investigation of your lifestyle, like your sleeping patterns and your how much sugar you have in your diet and various things like that, which can be quite revealing to see, oh, we're actually kind of stacking the dice against each other, against ourselves here. To be able to see what amount our environmental conditions are playing, and then what amount is coming from, a deeper thing going on. And to really have the courage to tune into your inner wisdom are the rest of the questions there, just to get you started. And especially who you can experience your depression for, like your people. Who are your people that you're going to experience depression and anxiety for? And at least have your heart open for them, do it for them. Next week, we're going to look at mastering the toxic habit cycle, how to undo the toxic habit cycle, how to create a habit cycle that's a natural flourishing. So thank you so much, everybody, for sticking out, and enjoy the reflection sheets throughout the week. Enjoy your depression. Enjoy your anxiety. And all the very, very best. And Isabella, I hope you're feeling much better next week.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.